me the next one to do that where I'm going to be like, oh, I saw it coming. I think it's going to be Andrew Schultz I would say Andrew Schultz is going to be the next one where I'm going to see he's doing those big arena pictures and just arena shows everywhere. And I remember I didn't know who Andrew Schultz was. I remember when I saw him on Joe Rogan, and I go, why do I know that guy? And I remember it was because I saw Lil Duval was on tour, and he brought Andrew with him to a couple shows, and Duval was doing like behind the scenes. They was like on some cliff in the Bahamas or something, and Schultz was diving off a cliff, and Duval's making fun of him, something like that. But when I saw him on Joe Rogan, that's when it hit me. I go, oh, that's why I know that guy. He was on tour with Duval. And then I watched this episode on Joe Rogan. This had to be 3-4 years ago. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's doing everything himself. He's doing the podcast himself. He's got these camera guys that travel with him. He's got this internet like talk show where he interviews people. So I shot Andrew a DM, and he was like, oh man, yeah, I keep forgetting I've been in the game a long time. I keep forgetting people like quote unquote grew up watching me. So he was like, oh, Gary, what's up, man? And we started DMing, exchange numbers. And then, a couple months later, I was in New York. I went on the Brilliant Idiots podcast with him and Charlamagne. And then I did another thing for him that night somewhere. And now to see where he's at, and he's just like moving tickets, and it's all from him. It wasn't anybody manufactured. It wasn't the quote unquote machine getting behind somebody. That was him tapping in to a segment of society that wanted to hear what he was saying, because he was going against the grain. He was going against cancel culture. And there's a lot of people very much like Andrew, to me, is like a new age Howard Stern, where Stern was doing all this off the beat stuff that nobody was doing. And that audience was, and I think that's going to be, of course, 20, 30 years later, I think that's going to be his audience. If you're asking me, to me, he reminds me of a Howard Stern. Obviously different, younger, up with the times, but that's who Andrew reminds me of. I wouldn't be shocked. I don't know where his career is going to take him. Wouldn't be shocked if we hear him signing some crazy $100-200 million deal with a Sirius or a Spotify or something like that, or YouTube. I mean, who knows where things are going nowadays. So I think he's the next one that's going to be doing those big. I'm going to see his social media, and he's going to be doing these big, huge arena shows. I saw he sold out Radio City Music Hall. So I always text him and DM him when he's got something going on, and just tell him, dude, you're crushing it. It's inspiring to watch. He's one of the reasons, like, when I started doing this podcast at this studio, I was like, he's one of the reasons, like, I don't live in LA, but there's times like, do I really want to get on a plane and do this when it ain't like a ton of money right now? I'm like, nope, you got to stay consistent, and you got to build your audience, and you got to, like, at some point, knock on wood, it just happens. And you don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen, but all of a sudden people get wind, and and more people start talking, and it just takes off. On the urban side, I think, and I don't know if arenas right off the bat, but I do think one person I've noticed who's been grinding as long as I have, who's now starting to move some tickets, is Deon Cole. And Deon might not remember this. I met Deon at Magic Summer Weekend in '98. And he just walked up to me and goes, hey, them Chicago comics, man, they will introduce themselves quick. I remember D-Ray introduced me. The way he introduced me was I was about to bring him up on Comic View. He goes, hey, what's up, man? I'm D-Ray. Yeah, I got green eyes. And he had a green suit on. I said, I see that. You got the suit to match. He goes, yeah. That's how I met D-Ray Davis. So Deon was the same way. We were leaving a party or something, and he came up next to me, and he was like, hey, what's up, man? My name's Deon, man. I see you out there. I'm from Chicago. And da-da-da. Like, them Chicago comics have no problem introducing themselves, and they always say they're from Chicago. That's how I met Deon. But I saw Deon's, like, all of a sudden, if you don't know his story, and that's one guy I want to get on my podcast, just because interesting backstory of how the needle started to move, so to speak, for him was, I remember he did one episode of Conan, and he did a Michael Jackson bit, and he always had his pad out, and he would write something down. And I don't know if that was part of the stick or he was really writing stuff down. I'm sure it was a combo. But But next thing I know, he was writing on Conan, and then you see him on some sketches with Conan. And a couple of times I saw him on a private jet with Conan going overseas to perform. And Deon always had his own style, his own swag. All of a sudden, he started to get more acting gigs, gets on Blackish, but it didn't translate into ticket sales right away. And because you as a comic, you see comics come to comedy clubs. You see when they say we're sold out. You also know when people say they're sold out if the room was papered, or you can look at ticket prices and be like, oh, they're selling out at $20 a ticket and not $50 a ticket. So Deon, definitely over the last year, post-COVID, when everything started opening up, he's just started to take off, and I see him doing theaters now, and he's got that Coology tour out there. So just Google Deon Coology, and you'll see the tour dates on there. So I see him doing theater dates now. So it's cool to see the guys have been grinding, and they don't know that I'm watching this stuff, and that's the stuff that I watch to be like, okay, you got to stay consistent in this. Some weeks, like podcast numbers in general will be up. Same with ticket sales. Some weeks they'll be a little down. You can't explain it. There's only so many Dave Chappelle, Kevin Hart's that they could just say, hey, I'm at Roscoe's tonight. I'm going to go up, and like 1,000 people show up trying to jam into Roscoe's to see him. Those aren't out there. A lot of the comedians, they gotta grind and grind and grind, and hopefully that it clicks, then people start buying tickets. So Andrew and Deon are two that I've noticed, but I think Andrew's going to be the next one that is doing the big arena shows. I say by 2024, we're going to see his social media, and he'll be doing like Madison Square Garden type shit, United Center type shit.